Welcome to OMF Music Resources with Junhee Han and me, Kenneth Drake. We would like you to visit our website, which is omfmusicresources.com, in which you will find descriptions of our books, some of which you see behind me here, our workshops, and performances we've given, and recordings of Haydn, Mozart, Beethoven on period pianos. The piano that you see in front of you here is a copy of a Fortepiano by Anton Walter, an organ builder and piano builder who was active in Vienna between roughly 1780 and 1820. This copy was built by John Lyon. I think it sounds pretty much like a piano of about 1800, according to the way I've leathered the hammers. Now, when Czerny was about a 10-year-old boy, he was taken to play for Beethoven, and 45 years later, when he wrote about that visit, he mentioned playing on a Walter piano. Now, this piano is a centerpiece for us in a project that we feel is very valuable. We won't write to a school and say, can we bring this piano to your school and play for you? What we say is, can we bring this piano and offer you the opportunity to collaborate with us in the use of this piano? In other words, we might play a recital, but you would also play a recital of ensemble music or solo music or perhaps chamber music. But the big thing about this project is that students get an opportunity to use this piano hands-on and learn what it has to offer. Now, there is a book by Bruce Haynes called The End of Early Music, and in it he tells that that Yo-Yo Ma, the cellist, had his cello restored, I suppose you'd say restored to the way it was when it was made, because he wanted to record some Corelli with the Amsterdam Baroque Orchestra. And after this was over, he had a comment about the whole thing. This is Yo-Yo Ma. He said, when we leave the familiar, which for us is the modern piano, and we go to the unfamiliar, which is this piano, and we come back again, everything has changed. He said, we haven't lost anything, but we have found a new freedom. And I think that is very interesting, and I would compare it with saying we have found a new territory in how we treat the piano and how we play this music. Now, you can never repeat the way it was. I mean, 8 o'clock in the evening in the year 1800, April 14, can never be re-happened. It's just past. But what you can learn from this piano is an approach to how you play the music of this period. In a way, what we do with this piano when we take it to a school is a missionary effort, because your students getting to learn about this new territory and learning things about interpretation and so forth will not help them to make any more money, but it will help them to develop a more soulful attachment to the music. Now there are 5 new territories that I would like to mention, and I'll list them first. There's sound, touch, extremes of dynamics, a speaking quality, and separating ideas. The first new territory is sound. Now, the range of dynamics on this piano is about the same, I think, as a modern piano, and that may not sound believable to you, but it's because this piano goes so much lower in softness than the modern piano does. And of course, the modern piano goes so much louder. But just to show you the soft side of this piano, the really intimate side, I'm going to play a few measures of the Beethoven, what we know of as the Moonlight Sonata. And I'm going to use the moderator. That's this knee pedal on this side here. And you see when I move it, there's a piece of cloth goes between the hammers and the strings, and it mutes the sound. What you hear is becomes this. And so it'll make the first movement of the Moonlight come closer to what Beethoven indicated underneath the tempo. He said, this movement must be played as delicately as possible and without dampers. Of course, that means with pedal. Now you won't make that kind of sound on the modern piano, but what this teaches a student or teaches anyone is that you listen for this mysterious kind of sound. Albert Einstein once said that the most beautiful experience a person could have was the sense of the mysterious. And it's in the softness of the sound that you hear a mystery, that you hear more character, I feel. The second new territory is touch. Now, to make a good comparison, we can compare measurements on the Steinway B here in the house and on this piano. And I have here the hammer for middle C on the Steinway. Now you can see, look at the size. After a while we'll compare it with the size of a hammer here in the Fortepiano. But the weight that it takes to push this hammer up to the string is 2.8 ounces on the Steinway. Now my little finger here is the jack in the action of the Steinway. And as it pushes the hammer up, and after it reaches a certain point, the jack slips out from under, and now the key dip on the Steinway, which is the distance that the key travels down, is regulated at 3/8 of an inch. The last 1/8 of an inch is what you feel in the rub of this jack slipping off of this roller down here. So when you put that all together, it's 3.8 ounces. On this piano, the key dip is 3/16 inches, which is exactly half, and the amount of weight needed to depress this key and raise the hammer is 1.4 ounces, exactly half. And again, you don't feel the let off. And I think this is a good time to pull out the action and show you the Viennese action and why it feels different. Okay, this is a Viennese action. Now, what you see is, here's the back check. The hammer goes up at the end of the check, it comes to a beak, and that rubs on something called the hopper, because it hops back and forth, obviously. And the thing is that is so slight that you don't feel that. Let me put this back in. Now, the ironic thing is that on the modern piano, it's easier to control sensitivity of touch because the resistance is greater. On this piano, it's so light that you have to use twice as much control of touch to get exactly what you want. If it's something like and so what this piano will teach anyone who plays on it is to go back to the modern piano, the modern action, and really exploit the ease of control that you have with that action because of the increased resistance of the key. The third new territory that this piano teaches is the extremes of dynamics. Now Tovey, in his edition of the sonatas, which was brought out early in the last century, included a commentary before in front of each sonata. And for the sonata Opus 2 number 2, he points out that there's a passage in the last movement of triplet eighth notes, which are marked fortissimo. And he says that because Beethoven's piano sounded weaker, and it was being forced beyond its limits, that on the modern piano you have to push more to make it sound as though it's exceeding its limit. Of course, the limits on the modern piano are much higher. Now, to illustrate a little bit what this is like, I'm going to play a short passage from the Pathétique, and this is in the exposition. Now, because this piano has light strings and everything, it makes the sound sound like it's going to fly apart. And on the modern piano, of course, it gives you so much, it's a little bit hard to go beyond that. Now, there's another place in the development of this sonata. You have to remember that in the introduction, he had this motif. Which is sort of interesting because this goes down, this goes up. It's sort of a conflict between E flat and E natural. When he goes to the development, he places this in the opposite ends of the keyboard. So and so you get a lot of sound in the bottom, but at the top it's kind of a chirping kind of sound. He's pushing the piano. It sounds a bit futile, but that's the idea. I think that's the character that's being brought out. Now, whenever you have to put more effort into forcing something to do that it doesn't want to do, it brings out the humanness in you. It brings out the emotion in you, just like rage or love as emotions would bring out the humanness in you. And that's, in a sense, what this piano teaches. It teaches a connection between human emotion and the music. Now, the fourth new territory is the speaking quality. When we had this piano in Las Vegas in the exhibit, there was a young man who came by and played it, and he said, this piano has a speaking quality. And to explain that, I think you have to listen to what happens with a single sound when you play it. On this piano, the initial tone is more prominent than the continuation. In fact, if you listen to it, it drops off right away, and then it continues for, if you listen closely, 7 or 8 seconds. The modern piano, I think, is engineered to to bloom right after the impact, and it will last for maybe 17 or 18 seconds. Now, this has something to do with indicated touches. If you look at the rondo, I think it's Opus 51, number 1 in C major, on the first page, within one measure, Beethoven has you playing legato with a slur, then no slurs, these are 16th notes, non-legato, and then staccato. So it sounds something like this. Or staccato. And of course there are all points in between. Now, it's just like in human speech, the initial tone on this piano is like the consonant that a word begins with, because the consonant will define the word. And it's just like in my hearing at this point, I can't differentiate between consonants because they're high-pitched. And so sometimes a word will have an entirely different meaning because I didn't differentiate between T and P or T and D or something like that. And so in this piano, this is so clear that what you do with articulation becomes so expressive. On the modern piano, you have so much more sonority, and that tends to cover the details of expressiveness more than this piano. The fifth new territory that I would like to mention is separating ideas. When you're playing this piano, which is unfamiliar to the listener, I think you want to be sure to separate ideas so that you can hear what the music is actually saying. As an example, if you have say an 11-year-old student who's playing the G major sonatina of Beethoven, you might hear something like this, if the kid has practiced this week. Now, if that's when the interesting time comes in the lesson, because you can point out to this person that this is one idea. It's just a neighboring tone. It's stepwise. It goes from here to here. And this is a broken chord. Okay? Suppose we do it like this. It makes each idea more important because they're commenting on each other. Now, another example would be the Sonata in G major, Opus 49, number 2, which, if you don't separate, sounds like this. And if I separate the idea, this is like a headline to a story. But if I separate the two, then each one seems more important and seems more communicative. So these are the new territories that I think Yo-Yo Ma would have referred to if he were a pianist. And it'd be interesting to hear what he would say about the cello. But I just want to repeat that you have to have a hands-on experience with this piano. You can't get these ideas really into your own being just by listening to somebody play it, or listening to a recording, or listening to an explanation. You have to you have to touch it.
Hi, I am Juni Han, a co-founder of OMF Music Resources. In these collaboration visits, we also offer, in addition to the teaching and the playing, a presentation on the similarities of thoughts between painters of Beethoven's day and his music. I have become very interested in the correlation between light, color, line, and mood in a painting with tonality, line, rhythm, dynamics, and character in a piece of music. Czerny, for example, says that when one plays the finale of the Appassionata, you hear the waves of the sea and hear calls from afar for help. This comment brings to mind one of the shipwreck paintings of Turner, or the crossed sword in the oath by Jacques Louis David. Creating a huge triangle is very similar to the climax in the development of the first movement of the Pathetique. Or the light in the late Turner painting, in which borders of figures are indistinct, much like passages in the late Beethoven sonatas. On the orchestra program at the close of the residency in the University of Utah, I play the Mozart C Major Concerto K503, conducting the graduate chamber orchestra from the Fortepiano. At other schools, Bob Jones University and Presbyterian College in South Carolina, I did the same, playing the C Major Concerto K415 with a double quartet as Mozart specified it could be done.